tested it with sperm as well. As I said, they did a lot of tests over the period of time. And what they did is they used a number of controls, and I'll show you here again. Um, they tested, this is Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Novavax, flu vaccine control, and normal saline control. So they tested all of them 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 to 3 hours. And this was semen from a 47-year-old. Within 3 hours, it was 0% motility, 0.1% motility with Moderna. Compare it to normal saline control, remains stable over that period of time. But saline would represent a normal media for sperm to be in. Even the flu vaccine control, there was some reduction, but not as significant as all of the vaccines. It was 0% within about 3 hours for all of them, stable in normal saline. Now, again, somebody debunking it would say, well, in any case, what would you be putting the vaccine with motile sperm about? It's not relevant. I think the point being, though, is that if you had circulation of these products, you could then have damage to cells, which is one of the questions that hadn't been properly answered in terms of biodistribution. The other thing that they looked at here, they were looking at these geometric entities that they saw in the paper. And what they found, and this is why I said it's not easy to replicate. So they were looking at this from week 1 all the way to 10 months. And they were observing this under the microscope. And you could see that these things peaked by about 4 months. It increased up to here and then gradually went down. And each one of the colors represents, so one is dark blue is Pfizer in normal saline, orange is Moderna in normal saline, Pfizer in distilled water, Moderna in distilled water. So they just used different controls to try and see if there was any pattern. But essentially, all of them, it increased for about 3 or 4 months and then gradually decreased again. Really, really strange patterns. This is what I'm saying is that whatever anyone may think about the journal that it was in, there are just some things here that they have done that are not easy to replicate, that you need to go and look at in more detail to try and say, is there any other explanation for some of these patterns? And again, you have here, this is another image showing again time frames. And you can see here again, this is over 12 months they were monitoring this in distilled water, normal saline. And you can see the red one is Moderna in calcium hypochlorite. No, that's the brown one. The red one is Pfizer in distilled water. And you can see here that this just gradually increases the approximate numbers of developmental grade of entities within the microscope. So it gradually increased over a 12-month period of time. Makes no sense. It really, really is strange. And even if they had contaminants in their system, you can see that when they use the control, some of these patterns did not occur as well. So again, I'm going to show you some of the strange things they noticed under the microscope. This is the kind of shapes of things, these spirals. Really, again, you would think that these are probably shards of metal. What is this? What are they? We're not sure. I genuinely can't make sense of what it is, but I don't discount what they saw because they took the pictures of it and they were doing it for such a long period of time. So it really is unusual patterns. And again, here are some more images with the paper that they took. And these are on the very powerful microscope, so you wouldn't see it otherwise. But what are these things? Very, very well, they're not randomly shaped. And so this is part of the reason why they think that this is relevant. This is not just a contaminant because of the unusual patterns and shapes that they take. it's hard to know if this was ever done before in any other product, and so we don't know if this is necessarily happening. But it's important to note they only saw this with the mRNAs. They didn't see it with the AstraZeneca and the Novavax. It caused other problems, but it didn't seem to be there. I'm going to show you another thing that they did, and this is the thing that, again, this is really too strange. I mean, the what it means, I genuinely don't know, but it's now aligning with some of the weirdest conspiracies that I've heard that genuinely I just ignored. But here is one of the things that they did. And so clearly they were listening to the conspiracies as well, and they decided to test this kind of stuff. So what they then did is that they then tested it with EMF, wireless recharger with a cellular phone. So they put a culture dish with it, set it to 5G streaming mode over a wireless charger for 1 to 2 hours. And they were taking electric and magnetic measures through the triphase field, measured at 300 volts, and they were measuring it. And so they did this for 1 to 2 hours. This is what it looked like at the start. This is what it looked like within 2 hours. Now, this is in distilled water. I have no idea why this would change so dramatically. They said the floating materials abruptly became larger and more numerous with sharper and more rectangular edges. And they said, in contrast, the Pfizer showed no immediate response, but instead, after 1 month of exposure, exhibited a delayed effect, a moderate proliferation of floating filaments, as seen right in figure 24. This is, I don't know what to say, but one thing is for certain is that this pandemic has brought out some of the most unusual things that I have ever seen. And I think certainly from my research in autoimmunity, I genuinely can't understand why the scientific community is not seeing what I'm seeing in terms of autoimmune responses. Why are they not concerned? One of the points that people say to me is that my research has largely been ignored because the implications are so serious and people understand it. That's why they ignore it. And in the same way, when I see this kind of strange pattern in science that is occurring that I can't explain, I still want somebody to look at this and corroborate whether or not these changes could actually be true. Now, if vaccine vials are being destroyed, it takes away the opportunity to do those kinds of detailed studies. And I would think and hope that with this kind of research being published, somebody somewhere is holding on to some of those and saying, let's do other checks and see whether or not this can be accurate. If we don't do this, and I say that I take us all the way back to the original question when we had a virus that looked as though it came out of a lab and the whole world largely ignored it. It's the equivalent of seeing someone you know doing something wrong. You ask them about it and they say that what you saw was not what you saw. And then you believe them. It's almost guaranteed it will happen again. And so the lesson that I have seen coming out of the pandemic is that whenever there are any unusual or strange patterns, we have a responsibility to ensure that there is nothing wrong that is happening. And the more people that ask these questions, the harder it becomes if somebody has any alternative agendas. And you have to remember that this kind of issue, when you think about it, will very often not actually benefit the people who are executing on what they are doing. They're just mere pawns in this. And we have to somehow get further answers, get better clarification, and not be afraid of conspiracies. The point of a conspiracy is to make sure that any element of it can't be true. As they say sometimes, where there is smoke, there is fire. But the fire may not be where you thought it was, but you still need to check where the smoke is coming from. That's how I look at it. You look at what is being seen, then you try and make sense of what it is that is in front of you. That's what I am doing with regards to embalmer's clots. I think I have a good idea as to what could be happening, why it's not necessarily being seen by everyone. So if you want to hear what I have to say, join me in this webinar. It's coming up just in a few days, and I'll share with you my thoughts as to what it is that could be going on with that. Remember, that story is also considered a conspiracy. For me, when I now look at the details and the analysis, is not a conspiracy. This is actually an important piece of information that really needs to be assessed. So as a final thought, remember, join us on our Kickstarter. We're very appreciative of any support that you can give. Help us to reach our target. And in the process, you'll also get a gift about Malone to learn more about what he said at the Senate hearing. And the final point for those people, if you are on YouTube, we've opened up a membership point where it's just easier for me to be able to answer questions. And so what I'll do is sometimes people say some very interesting things. It will be in that membership video section. A way of supporting the research is to join at a really nominal fee and support us as we continue to bring you cutting edge information, real-time science and analysis in ways that you've never seen it before.